Welcome to the Game Corner with another return review, this time on Monster Hunter Wilds. Monster Hunter Wilds came out a couple of weeks ago, and I figured I'd give it the old return review treatment. Monster Hunter Wilds comes from the storied franchise of Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter's been around since 2004 when it first came out in Japan on the PlayStation 2 as the original game, Monster Hunter, and has 7 or so main games, with the most recent one being Monster Hunter Rise, and before that Monster Hunter World. My personal experience with the franchise started with World. I played World for about 30 minutes and then gave up. And then when Rise came out on the Switch, I had a large group of friends who were playing it, who were going to definitely super excited about the game and were going to play it, so I jumped on that bandwagon. Played a lot of Rise on the Switch. When it came out on PC a year later, I got it again to play it on PC and the Steam Deck, and while I did enjoy the game, I didn't play that one nearly as much, that version of it. And then a bunch of my friends and a bunch of people I knew were going to go ahead and get Wilds, so I figured I'd jump on it as well. The previews and the gameplay trailers we saw for it made it look like it was, the best Monster Hunter yet, as it should be. And I jumped on it, and yeah, now let's talk about the first couple hours of it. Monster Hunter is one of those series that I think personally there's not a whole lot out like it. The gameplay loop and the kind of like loop progression, I've heard people kind of compare Destiny 2 to it, and some sort of like looter shooters and looting games in that fashion to Monster Hunter. And while there's probably something close to that, it's still not quite the same. Monster Hunter is kind of a beast, pun intended, all its own. Monster Hunter, it gives you, you have the 14 or so weapons that you can choose from, and each of those are kind of like a mini game within the game itself, I think. And I think that really lends itself to a bunch of different play styles, but the overall loop of hunt monster, carve monster parts off of it, turn monster parts into gear to hunt monster again, is still present in this game. Let's talk about the current situation for the game on Steam. As of recording, it has about 97,000 reviews and is sitting at mixed, which puts it at, 62% positive. Almost certainly most of those reviews are going to be about the performance, and unless you have a beefy PC that can run it well, or you're playing, I think on the consoles it might be better optimized, PS5 Pro, you're gonna have a rough time on mid to low tier systems, I think. So that is a big bummer. I know there's been a bunch of hacks online about changing some INI files or whatever that may or may not fix it. I'm not sure, so your mileage may vary. Needless to say, normally for return reviews, I like to do these on the Steam Deck. I booted Monster Hunter Wilds on the Steam Deck and proceeded to, when I loaded into the forest base camp, I think is where I was at the time, watch a slideshow, and a low graphics slideshow is what that game became on the Steam Deck, so I would not recommend. That being said, looking at the first couple hours of the game, I really don't think that Monster Hunter is the style of game where you can really get a feel for the whole game in that first couple of hours. You'll get a sense of it for sure, but you're going to only see so much. For being a long historied game as Monster Hunter is, there's a bunch of mechanics that are added onto the game with every new one that comes out. The first couple of hours that I played in the game, putting it still under the first 2 hours for the Steam return policy, I think I bought maybe 4 monsters. I'd have to actually check the B-roll. I recorded way more than I needed to for this, but I think I got 4 monsters in, which were the Chatacabra, which is a cool frog thing, was the first thing that you fight. You get into that pretty quickly. After that, you have the Quematrice, which is a fire-breathing chicken. Shortly after that, after a bunch of story, is the Labarina, and then the Kongolala, that's how you say that, are the first 4 monsters you fight in Monster Hunter Wilds. And I think in about 2 hours, especially if you're skipping the cutscenes, you can really get to those 4 monsters. if you're enjoying the cutscenes or looking at the scenery, which is beautiful, don't get me wrong, you're going to take a little more time, and you might not get to the Kongalala by the time those 2 hours are up. However, 4 fights does give you a sense of the game, and after each of those fights, I was not really missing resources, right? Like after the hunt, I would go with the quest complete sign and then carve the monster, get back to base camp, normally at this point in the game teleported because of story stuff. And then I can easily talk to Gemma, the forge person, forgetress, that's the word, sure, and make if not a new weapon, at least a handful of sets of pieces of armor, if not a full complete set, based off of what I was able to hunt off the monster. In the first couple hours of the game, while you're looking at going through the tutorial, a lot of people from Monster Hunter will say that all of low rank hunts are basically all tutorial, and I think I wholeheartedly agree with them. So 2 hours does not get you past what, quote unquote, the tutorial of this game would be, for better or for worse. There's a lot of mechanics, like I said earlier, to this game. So I did not learn everything in the first 2 hours by a long shot. I'm about 8 or 10 hours in right now, by the time I'm recording this review, and I'm still learning things, and I don't even think I know how to use the radial menu on the mouse and keyboard right. So, there's a lot of hidden mechanics in this game. And that does bring me to the menus. This game is so very menu heavy that you need to learn how to read those pretty quickly to get the most out of your time here. And the first couple hours doesn't do the best job of teaching you that. However, I do think as you go through all of low rank, you'll sink or swim as you try and learn the menus, really. It does an okay job of teaching you, but there's probably a lot of things that you miss if you're skipping the story and skipping through a lot of the pop-up tooltip texts that come up on the UI. The setting for Monster Hunter Wilds is, by all accounts, wild. You start off in the plains, and the second area you get to in the first couple of hours of the game is the forest, and you are given so many opportunities to just look at the scenery as you are riding your new mount, the Secret, following your handler Alma through the wilds. You're story-wise forced to look around, which for better or for worse, you get to see the area, but it's also a pretty slow part of the tutorial and the story, if I may say so. But still, if you have a machine that can actually run this game, it's gonna look really good. You have this wide open area that in other previous entries to the franchise, you would have all of these large areas sectioned off by loading screens, and you'd have to kind of go between them all, or even load out into the wild area, and then you're forced back. But as you are doing, kind of freely hunting, which you can do before the story is over if you really want to go out and hunt a couple of monsters you've already fought in the story, you can just go out there, hunt a monster, and you're not transported back immediately unless you're in, like I said, a story beat that forces you back to camp, which is nice. It's a really nice change, because one of the things that really tore me away from Monster Hunter before was that you had to kind of warp back, and you couldn't just hang out, as it were, in the wilds area where you were hunting monsters. You couldn't just spend more time there. And Wilds is all about that, which is great in my opinion. Along with the first couple monsters you fight, you're going to be picking your main and sub weapon. You get to carry 2 in this game, which is a wild advancement for the franchise. There are 14 weapons you can choose from, each with a distinct fighting style, like I said before, that kind of makes it its own mini game within the game itself. Now, from my past experience, I kind of knew what weapon I wanted to go with. I'm a Charge Blade main. Shout out to all my other Charge Blade mains. And then the other 2 weapons I really want to kind of focus on are Switchblade, that one, and the dual blades. Those are kind of what I'm playing with right now, but I just already knew that. If you don't know which weapon you want to choose, there are tons of guides out there that'll help you decide which weapon you want to pick. And even the beginning of the game, before you go out to your first hunt, you kind of have Alma, your handler, ask you a few questions to let you figure out which weapon you want to choose. Now, that being said, there are a bunch of weapons. They have a nice training area where you can kind of go and practice, but within the game itself, within the menu, there is kind of a combo guide for each weapon that goes more in depth than what you're going to learn just either playing the game or playing around in the practice area that's at the first camp. The story for this game is a Monster Hunter story. It is written fine. It is serviceable. Most people are not playing Monster Hunter for the story, and this story is a little more in your face than I remember the previous games being, which is, again, it's fine. It tries to get you invested in the characters. It tries to let you know more about the world that you're in, which is cool. But for the most part, a lot of people I know are skipping the story, especially as you get further and further into low rank and definitely into high rank. I don't even know if there is much story in high rank. I think the story ends at low rank. Don't quote me on that. However, I know people are skipping it, and if you're trying to get the most out of your first couple hours of the game, it's actually hard to skip. Like, you can skip some cutscenes, but there are, like I said before, some areas where it's just you are in the story. You are walking on a secret, going from one place to another in the story. So take that as you will. Just be prepared that there is a story if you want it, and you can do your best to skip it if you don't mind missing the story beats. Also, if you do skip cutscenes, you do have the option to go back and watch them at any time, which is nice. Now, when I was talking earlier about the environment for this game, it is gorgeous, it is vast, it is wild, and it is a great place to hang out with your buds and other hunters. If only multiplayer was not so obtuse for this game. That, like I said, there's a bunch of menus and there are different options for choosing multiplayer. To be fair, in the first couple hours, I didn't actually go into multiplayer, but later on, a couple of days into the game being out, me and a couple of friends are trying to multiplayer together, and you have link party, environment link, you have your squad, and the lobby. Those are the four kind of main things that exist for teaming up in this game, and you kind of have to know how to manage all of them if you and your buds want to go and hunt monsters together or just explore the wilds. And there's each of those different things have different implications, like being able to be in the same wilderness area versus just being able to be like first on call for an SOS flare. And it's super obtuse. If you and your friends don't grasp it right away, I'm sure someone online has a better guide for how to do it. I still have not done it to the most success. I tried it twice, and each time it was just so clunky. The background music of this game is really something to behold. I think it's really nice when games have like kind of full scores written out for them and performed the game. And while I do really enjoy it, and I do think this is a great score, one of the things that I really like about it is that as I was hunting a monster and focusing on the roars of the monster or the slashes of my charge blade, buzz sawing into the wound of the monster, the background score really did fade into the background, which I do think is great because it's not in your face with like intense music or something that's really taken away from the experience of the hunt, which I think is great. But I do really enjoy the music in the background as well. So yeah, I think it's I really like the score that accompanies this game. Speaking of generally hunting, the two best things that they added to this game, in my opinion, is not only the wide open space, but the two things for hunting is the focus and wound system. The focus system being great for mouse and keyboard because it turns the game into a more FPS style where you actually have a reticle on your screen, no matter what weapon you have, and you can use that to really force your hunter to turn in the direction that you want them to face. In previous entries of the game, and if you don't have, and in Wilds, if you don't have focus mode on, your hunter is swinging their weapon or aiming the weapon in a way based off of the direction they're walking, or with the inputs you put into that. And the right stick or your mouse is kind of more focused on generally guiding the hunter and focusing the camera, of course. Now, it was super slow and clunky, I felt, in previous games. So pretty much if I'm fighting a monster in this game, I have focus mode on, which is a toggle for mouse and keyboard, and I believe for controllers you have to hold down one of the triggers, which may be a little cumbersome. I'm sure you can change that in the setting. However, being able to actually say, like, force my hunter to look in the direction that I want them to and hit where I want them to with more precision is a game changer for me. And I love that a lot. Again, I bounced off the other monster hunters because it just felt a little slower and more methodical, which is also part of the way this game is designed, right? The gameplay is supposed to feel that way. But it was hard for me personally to get my monster hunter to face the right direction, especially if I whiffed a big swing of my axe and I just, missed, and I'm in a combo and I can't quickly force my hunter to face a different direction. I think it's a great improvement. Along with focus mode, if you're in focus mode, you can see these highlighted wounds on the monster. If you can focus on them and destroy those wounds, you can more easily get monster parts, which is great for crafting gear. And also you have a quick action that you can do a cool big combo that's weapon specific based off of hitting a wound, which is great. It kind of gives you some options depending on what weapon you have. Again, for Charge Blade, for instance, you immediately slash a couple times with the sword and then switch into the axe mode and buzzsaw into a wound, most often destroying it in one, maybe two hits, which is great because you can immediately get more parts, like I said. And it makes you feel kind of epic as you hit the button a couple of times to quickly do what would be a more complicated combo with the weapon. And I think that's great because it makes you feel a little bit more epic. All that said, closing out the review, I have to say that the first couple of hours of the game, you get a small taste for what's in store for you, and you get a small taste of the otherwise lukewarm story, I think. But I think it is enough to let you know if you want to play Monster Hunter. If you've played in the past, you already kind of get a feeling, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this is the best Monster Hunter by so far, because it's the newest one, and each one gets you a little bit closer to being a little more inviting to new players. However, there's still a bunch of cruft that comes with being a 20-year-old franchise, and a lot of these menus are hard to navigate, and there's a lot of aspects of hunting monsters and each weapon that will take time to master. So again, if you've played the game before, you have an idea if you like the game, and if you're curious and you want to come back to the franchise like I did, I think this is a great entry to try again. If you're a Monster Hunter diehard already, if you're already a sicko for the franchise, you already have the game. Why are you watching this review? I appreciate you. If you're otherwise not sure, I do think you get a taste of the game. I do think you'll have a lot you'll miss if you don't go past the first couple hours. But all that said, I will give the game itself a thumbs up. I do like the game a lot, and the first couple hours being a slow start with the story, if you're enjoying that, and the first couple monsters you fight, it gives you a feeling of epic power, kind of. It's part of the fantasy of this game. It gives you that right away as you hunt a monster, get brand new items and armor right away, weapons and armor right away from it, and you go out for the next one. It's a good loop, and as the story progresses past the first couple hours, it does kind of get a little repetitive for the story. Again, the whole game's repetitive. All you do is hunt monsters and build new things out of them. It's great. That's the point. That's not the part that I'm complaining about, really. I think you get past that first couple hours, you get into the story slump, but the first couple hours get you into the hunt, and I think that's very important. So I would also give the first couple hours thumbs up. I recommend the game. I recommend checking it out if you're curious at all about Monster Hunter. And if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to hunting monsters and building new charge blades. So until then, no matter what you decide to play, whether it's Monster Hunter Wilds or something else, press start and game on. Bye!